Good afternoon, UCD. What's going on? As Dr. McGuire said, she asked me to come and talk to you all about artificial intelligence and the ethics associated therein. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm a man of my word. But I just want to first say thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for the opportunity to get to know some colleagues over the course of lunch. Thank you all for coming. I understand we had a room and we had to get a bigger room. That's awesome. Just quick show of hands. I want to know who I'm talking to. Quick show of hands. Who here knows how to spell AI? And this is college, right? All right. Another quick show of hands. How many people actually use AI? Okay. So fair amount. Last show of hands. Who's got a phone? A mobile phone? Okay. So everybody. So for those of you who didn't raise your hand for the I use AI, if you got a phone, you're using it. I only share that because AI has gotten so infused in our lives that in some regards, when we see the next new big foundation model come out, we think that's AI, but no, AI has been around for a really long time. And it is just a part of how we operate. Sort of like the internet. Like, can you imagine operating your life these days without access to the internet? It'd be really difficult. And so in some regards, AI has become that or is becoming that. It is obviously advancing at significant rates. All right, so having said that, I'm going to ask you to imagine standing in front of a mirror, right? It's a simple object, but at one point in time in our history, a mirror was a remarkable innovation. It was revolutionary. The earliest mirrors were found in pools of water or polished obsidian. When you go back into antiquity, you'll learn that, as well as burnished copper, right? So I like to imagine being the first guy to see himself in like a glass mirror. It's like, oh my God, I got to do something about these sideburns, right? His wife was probably like, dude, I've been trying to tell you that all this time. But like to be able to see yourself in the mirror, right? These reflective surfaces fundamentally changed how humans understood themselves. And so today, I'm going to suggest that we are standing before a new kind of mirror. And we just happen to call it artificial intelligence. And like those first reflective surfaces, AI is changing how we see ourselves, how we understand our capabilities, and how we envision our future. When I look at data, I don't just see numbers and patterns. I see, if you will, our recorded existence. I see our digital footprints, our past choices. It's our history, but it's preserved in bits and bytes. Every click that we make on phones, every purchase, every search query tells a story about who we are as individuals and as a society. And so what AI does is it uses this data to reflect humanity back to itself, if you will, to reflect us back to ourselves. And sometimes it does it with startling clarity. Oh my God, right? Sometimes it does it with distortion. It magnifies our brilliance as well as our biases, our wisdom as well as our short-sightedness. So when an AI system, as Dr. McGuire was commenting earlier, when an AI system produces biased results, It's not simply a technical failure. It's showing us the biases embedded in our data. Again, like I said, it's our recorded existence, so it's just showing us the biases that we embody. And it's reflecting it right back to us as if it were a mirror. In today's world, the ability to capture, aggregate, and use data is a source of power. And with profound power, as I said on Spider-Man, comes profound responsibility. So just as we wouldn't want a distorted mirror in our homes, unless you live in a circus, I don't know. We don't want it giving us false impressions about who we are and about ourselves. Similarly, we shouldn't accept AI systems that reflect a distorted version of humanity. So this is an area that we have to get right, or at least get better. So the question before us, it's not whether to use AI. That decision has already been made. We're there, right? We're not talking about the future, we're talking about the now. The question is how to ensure that these reflections help us become better versions of ourselves. And I would offer that it's not only a question, but that's the profound opportunity that we have in front of us right now, should we choose to accept it. The pursuit of an answer to that question has to begin with an understanding of what responsibility truly entails. I believe at its core, responsibility is our duty to care. It's about accepting ownership for our actions and their consequences, both those that we intend as well as those that we don't. The responsibility, it exists on multiple levels. It's personal, so it's the choices that we make as individuals and how we use and interact with technology. It's also professional. So that comes down to things like standards that we uphold for the work that we're developing, deploying, and when we're utilizing AI systems. But importantly, and often overlooked, it's collective. In society, we have what we call social contracts, these society-wide agreements that we make about what values our systems should embody, whether they are AI systems, transportation systems, academic systems. If you will, if you associated each of those with a technology, all that technology is doing is embodying our values. Not everything that's faced can be changed. But here's what we know for those of us who've lived a little bit of life. Nothing can be changed until it's faced, right? So around the world, what you see right now is regulators wrestling with some twin truths. First, they bear the weight of being responsible stewards of society, attempting to protect citizens from harm, preserving human dignity, ensuring fairness, while simultaneously recognizing that to turn away from AI's promise is to diminish the very futures that they seek to protect. Their nations, like this one, they hunger for innovation, for economic vitality, for the solution these technologies might bring to our most intractable problems. We have examples that are active of governments attempting to respond. Of course, here you've got the EU AI Act, which takes a horizontal omnibus, right, risk-based approach with fees to companies like ours for up to 7% of global revenue should we not comply. It's an approach. But there are other approaches, like the UK, that is preferring, as they call it, critical adaptability. All right? They don't intend at any point in the near future to have a horizontal approach toward regulating AI. You've got the South Koreans with their new South Korean AI Act. They seek to promote the AI industry and protect its users, but they're doing it through a collection of notices and nudges rather than punitive consequence. The list, we can talk about it all day long. It continues. It includes the African Union, Brazil, Canada, and whatever it is we're going to do in the United States. All right? But I submit to you here, UCD, that right now is an all-in moment. You know, if we truly believe that AI puts us at the precipice of society reshaping capability, while government has a role to play, government alone cannot and should not be solely responsible for resolving this current dilemma. There's a role for all of us. Industry, academia, civic organizations, and then each of us as individuals. We all have choices to make here. Now, some out in the world would have us to believe that our choices are binary. Protection or progress, caution or courage, regulation or innovation. I submit to you that this framing is not merely incorrect, it's a lie. It's a lie that we tell ourselves to avoid the harder truth. Just to get a little poetic on you, the river and its banks are not enemies. They define each other. The banks without the river are merely ditches. The river without the banks is a flood. We need them both. You can have innovation and regulation. They are not mutually exclusive. Responsibility represents the delicate balance between freedom, all that I want to do, anytime I want to do it, and obligation. These are two ideas that we have to hold at the same time. We cannot afford any other way. So certainly we cherish the freedom to innovate, to create, to push boundaries. Yet with that freedom comes the obligation to consider the ripple effects of our innovation across society. True responsibility isn't about limiting creation, it's about creating with intention, foresight, and care. So in the context of AI, I believe that responsibility means acknowledging that when we build systems, company like mine, that we can make decisions affecting human lives, we have to remain accountable for those decisions. Right? When we're building out, we have to anticipate the potential impact to human lives. The algorithm that we may execute, the judgment, it has our values embedded in it, right? The choices about what data to use, what outcomes to optimize for, what safeguards to implement, those are all human choices. Let's not relegate this to some abstract entity that we call computer or model or chat, whatever it is, right? Those are human choices. And for those choices, we, all of us, we bear responsibility. This is why I believe AI presents such an intriguing ethical landscape. It's because we stand at the crossroads of enormous potential and significant risk, right? The economic projections, I'm sure you all have heard them, they stagger us. So by 2030, AI is expected to contribute approximately $15.7 trillion to the global economy. Trillion with a T, right? Advances in healthcare could add up to 10 years to the human lifespan. We just heard advances in healthcare helping to bring new life into the world, right? Productivity gains, get this, could reduce work weeks by 30% while maintaining the same economic output. Translation, you may not have to work as much or as often in order to produce the same amount that we produce today. And this isn't theoretical, right? These advances are very much in motion right now. Just last week, I was in the Netherlands visiting teams that SAS collaborates with at Erasmus Medical Center and TU Delft, and speaking with public health experts who, with the World Health Organization that you pointed out on your slides. Collectively, we're hard at work trying to responsibly bring AI into the clinical setting and even to the patient's bedside. It's remarkable work, right? To think about, you've got doctors, it's a supply-demand issue, right? You've got doctors who have less time than they have patients. And they need ways for determining when patients need to get out of bed so they can put new patients in beds, right? And so we believe that we could use a little bit of technology to help them from a decision support perspective to not only help patients get home so they can heal more quickly, but to help de-stress some of the doctors as well, right? By the way, newsflash, it's never a good idea to have a doctor working 24 hours a day. Right, I'm just saying. I work closely with my employer's risk, fraud, and compliance division, where we have a lot of smart folks working with financial institutions to develop AI that enhances things like fraud detection, that optimize investment strategies, and improve customer service. All of this stuff is hugely important to the digital economy. Again, we're talking about the here and now, where our identities getting compromised is a really big deal, right? So the ability to have banks be able to capture the signal for fraud to alert you that someone is using your credit card that isn't named you is a really big deal. These are all real advances that will, if they haven't already, have real positive impacts on all of us. Yet, you knew it was coming, but yet, alongside these promises looms the possibility of profound risk because AI systems amplify existing inequalities. They concentrate power in the hands of a few technology giants, right? It can displace workers faster than new opportunities emerge. It can even pose existential threats if advanced systems are misaligned with our human values. That's the whole alignment problem that you've probably heard about. Today's primary beneficiaries of the AI revolution are predominantly large technology companies in wealthy nations. I'm going to say that one more time. Today's primary beneficiaries of the AI revolution are predominantly large technology companies in wealthy nations. The top 5 AI companies have a combined market cap greater than the GDP of all but the 7 richest countries on this planet, right? This centralization of power and resources isn't just problematic from an equity standpoint. It threatens the diversity of perspectives that we all need for a truly beneficial AI development. Because when people don't feel as though their interests are included in development, over time, they reject it. We have a tall climb ahead of us, folks. So as a proof point, global public trust in AI remains low. According to the 2025 edition of the Edelman Trust Barometer, only 37% of respondents trust AI. People believe that AI may not be fair. People believe that AI may make biased decisions against them. A mere 29% believe current AI governance structures adequately protect public interests. And again, this is a global study. The UK government reported back December of last year that over half the public thinks that AI is already used at least sometimes to deliver public services. However, there are concerns about its negative role in the spread of misinformation and job displacement. Okay? These are very real issues when you get down to the heart of it. Trust is the preeminent currency for society. If a society believes that its government is using technology that is not trustworthy, who can that society trust? If that technology is being used to mis and disinform such that people in the society can't trust one another, what happens to that society over time? So when you hear a lot about the existential threats of AI, this is really what we're talking about. We're not talking about your vacuum cleaner waking up to kill you, right? This is the stuff we're talking about. The path toward trustworthy AI, however, it's not mysterious. It really isn't. It simply requires shared risk, shared reward, and shared responsibility. Because when the burdens of AI development, things like privacy risk or job displacement, are borne by one group while the benefits flow primarily to another, trust will erode. We know that already. When both the challenges and opportunities are distributed more equally and equitably, when stakeholders from diverse backgrounds have meaningful input into AI development, then trust can flourish. So if it isn't clear already, now might be a good time to say that I have neither a utopian or a dystopian view of what lies ahead. In fact, I am optimistic, but I'm not Pollyanna. All right? I was born at night, but not last night. All right? Based on the many, many examples that we can point to throughout human history of different people groups being purposely left behind or even harmed by the advancements and innovations of the day, I think I'm justified in saying that this is a key moment. It's a key moment for all of us to look in this mirror and decide what we want to have reflected back to us. Now, while responsibility focuses on ownership and accountability, I want to introduce you to a complementary concept, response ability, which I define as our capability to respond effectively when systems don't behave as expected. Now, it's important to note that AI is still an emerging technology, and as such, it's important that we execute to learn and adapt. I'll share a recent example that I think illustrates this concept. In October of 2024, a major healthcare system implemented an AI diagnostic tool, okay? It was intended to prioritize emergency room patients. So during a busy night, the system began incorrectly flagging routine cases as critical, and it deprioritized the really urgent ones, right? Obviously it was a technical failure, but it wasn't catastrophic. And it wasn't catastrophic because the hospital had a response protocol that was pretty robust already in place. And so human clinicians quickly identified what was going on, and then they were able to triage and remediate. They later discovered that the AI model that they were dependent on was drifting. So what model drift is when the data that is used to inform the model starts to change underneath the model because data continues to update, on a persistent basis. Then the algorithms designed for that model don't perform as expected, right? Because the data underneath has shifted. And so this thing starts to drift. So that's what was happening to them. They had an anomaly. But because they had a procedure in place, they were able to respond accordingly. This incident highlights that technical failures absolutely will occur, right? Again, this is emerging tech. So our success, it depends not on avoiding every possible failure or trying to anticipate every potential risk, but on developing the ability to respond when they happen. So my view, when we start talking about regulatory actions, potential laws to put in place, we've got to make sure that those laws are pliable enough to respond to the emerging tech and to address issues as they occur. This is where things like AI governance become really important. AI, it's not a monolith. Like, we got the phone, we got our ChatGPT, we got our AI Premium, like all of that is AI. It's a compilation of tools and techniques for managing data, developing models, and deploying insights. So in that case, we all need a sophisticated mechanism for aggregating information about these systems, a sophisticated way of orchestrating their actions, a sophisticated way for monitoring their performance, and transparently reporting on their operations. So that's, in a nutshell, what AI governance is all about. Now, this AI governance term, it's a nascent industry right now. It's a bit of a cottage industry starting to grow up alongside a lot of the new generative AI developments. And we're seeing a variety of approaches from both small and specialized firms, and as well as large established companies like ours. Some will focus on things like what they call model documentations, others on runtime monitoring, and still others on things like bias detection or explainability. But I think over time, the industry will likely harmonize around key requirements and methods for measuring things like transparency, fairness, safety, privacy, and so on. I think we'll eventually get to the point at which we are developing standards for capabilities to satisfy all of those, but we just aren't there yet. This is a space that we are particularly excited about at SAS. I've been pushing us to be an early mover in this space. In fact, we've had governance built into a lot of what we do for quite some time, and now what we're doing is abstracting some of the attributes and some of the products and kind of baking a broader portfolio that we can make available to like C-suites and boards, because AI is a C-suite and board issue. This is not just work that's happening in the computer labs anymore with the data scientists, right? AI is a topic on the board agenda, right, of every major concern on the globe, right? So the ability to govern this is extremely important right now. So the maturation of what will eventually become a governance ecosystem, I think, is really crucial because effective oversight will require a multi-layered approach from the board on down. Now, again, as I said, regulation has an important place, establishing guardrails that protect fundamental rights and setting minimum standards and those sorts of things like safety and transparency and so on. But as I stated earlier, governments alone can't do it. So as a consequence, regulation alone is not sufficient. We need self-governance within organizations, and that's where this AI governance piece starts to slot in. So government, self-governance by industry, of course, necessary literacy in academia so that students are able to matriculate into whatever the field of endeavor, with this fundamental knowledge. All very, very important. But perhaps most important is the personal and professional literacy around AI. So I want to double click on that for a second. I think each of us, each one of us, regardless of our technical background, needs to develop the capacity to ask critical questions about the AI systems that we all encounter. What data was used to train the system? Who benefits from its deployment? What oversight exists? What happens when it fails? I think we all need to have some measure of ability to critique AI as we encounter it. I believe that we all are innovators. I think each of us has the ability to create and make changes to something that already exists. That's all innovation is. Innovation isn't reserved for those of us with technical degrees or Silicon Valley addresses. I believe innovation is a fundamentally human capacity. I think it is in all of us. Technology, gang, doesn't emerge from a vacuum. Right? We build on it. It builds on generational knowledge, just like advances in medicine, right? We've seen over the years, agriculture, education. We don't learn the same way we used to learn back in the 1500s, right? We build on it. So it's important for us to know that the tech mavens that we hear about that are kind of occupying way too much space these days, they don't know it all. They don't. They can't. In fact, their innovations are often more powerful when informed by expertise from completely different domains. And this is where you come in. Here's an example. Consider how the internet evolved. I know some of you all look a little young, so you might think that the internet was always here, but let me tell you, it wasn't. It wasn't. It evolved when experts from various domains got involved, really. In the early 1990s, back when dinosaurs walked the earth, I know, there were real reservations, seriously, about online activities that we all now take for granted. Some thought that we should abandon hope altogether. I don't know if some of you are old enough to remember some of the panic around that. They thought that we should abandon hope because of the complexity and security risks being so high when it came to, are you telling me I'm going to take my credit card number and actually put it into this thing? Like, what's that all about? Right? I don't know. What? E-commerce? Like, that was a really big thing. Last year, 2024, there was an estimated $6 trillion in e-commerce activity, according to Shopify. So we go from panic-stricken about if I will ever use my credit card to $6 trillion in the short span of about 30 or so years. The banking sector, it was initially resistant to the internet, but they brought their domain expertise to the table, and now financial institutions, they developed secure transaction protocols for us that transformed e-commerce. Same was true in the entertainment industry, where there were fights against things like digital distribution. Anybody remember Napster back in the day? Like, that was a really big deal. But when entertainment experts embraced the internet, we gained revolutionary platforms like Netflix. The healthcare sector, same way. It transformed telehealth during the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So my point here is that they just brought specialized knowledge to shape how the technology would show up in their fields. And I think we all have that ability to take a lot of the AI that exists today, learn about it, and figure out how to apply it in our fields, in your particular domains of expertise. There are thousands of AI tools being developed. Just go on Google them. There's tons of them. With your domain expertise, whether you are in healthcare or education or manufacturing or law, I think you have a critical perspective. And I think you will be the key to making AI better. Right? We cannot sit back and wait on the big tech mavens to cure the world for us. We don't want their version of the world, trust me, I've heard about it. Right? You need to learn to identify the benefits. You need to learn to understand the intended uses. And you need to learn to appreciate the risk. Doesn't suggest that you shouldn't jump in because of the risk. It just means you should have your eyes wide open. Right? Things like model cards are an excellent framework to provide this analysis. Happy to go into it maybe after we talk, maybe doing a panel or something. But basically, a model card is it's a document for an AI system that shows its intended use cases, its limitations, its performance characteristics and biases and that sort of thing. I think about it like a nutrition label on your food. It tells you you're going to consume so much sugar, so much salt, right? Same sort of thing, but just for AI. Right? I'm going to say this, particularly for those of us who are early in career or thinking about coming early career, right? To be effective in this emerging landscape, we're going to have to suspend certainty. What do I mean by that? Rigid thinking, whether it's blind enthusiasm for every new AI tool, or whether it's categorical rejection of all of them, this rigid thinking or this certainty prevents us from making nuanced judgments. And this is a moment for nuance. I know polarities are real sexy these days, and especially in the geopolitics, but this is not a time for that. We have to live in some gray right now. We need to embrace things like ethical inquiry, and we should be asking ourselves, not just can we with a lot of this technology, but should we, right? And then how do we? And we have to resist the urge to isolate into binary tribes of us versus them. Accelerationists versus the safety camp, and like that's all silly. As if people who want to accelerate innovation don't also care about being safe. Duh. Remember that mirror example I talked about earlier? When future generations look into the mirror of AI, the reflection they will see starts with all of us, you and me. So, here's a proposition. Let's make sure they see a technology that amplifies our wisdom rather than our biases. Let's make sure they see a technology that distributes power rather than concentrating it. Think we can do that? This is where you say, yeah, we can do that. Let's ensure they see a tool that helps solve our most pressing problems, that expand human potential, and that reflects our highest values. Think we can do that, y'all? Again, this is where you say yes, 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 we can. And let's guarantee that they inherit a society that chooses connection over division, creativity over conformity, and shared prosperity over exclusion. That choice, that responsibility or duty to care, that belongs to all of us. And I happen to believe that together we can ensure that AI reflects the best of what humanity can be. So I'm excited. If you guys want to keep the conversation going, or want to learn more about what we're doing with responsible innovation at SAS, feel free to grab the QR code and all that good stuff. Again, I want to say thank you for the invitation. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to a robust panel discussion.